All right. First of all, thank you to IB UNESCO and IECD for inviting me here to speak. It is a great privilege and an honor. Thank you to everyone for being here. I know this is probably the worst time in the day to present because everyone's sleepy and it's after lunch and you've been through a whole day of presentations. So I will try and keep it short. Just a brief introduction. My name is Aniruddh. I run a chain of preschools and nurseries in 5 countries. We have 22 schools across Hong Kong, Dubai, India, and the UK at the moment, and we're opening another 20 this year. I'm going to talk a little bit about data in early childhood settings. But what I'm really going to talk about is just give a snapshot of some of the systems that we are developing, why we are developing them. I think since yesterday, there have been some very, very good presentations. And thank you to all the presenters, because it's really helped me learn a lot and refine my thinking in terms of what's going on in this space. For those of you who recall yesterday, I think Neo from NeoBear spoke about the future of the preschool classroom. I actually believe that that is going to happen. We are doing a little bit of that. So if any of you thought that was outlandish, it's not. It is happening as we speak, and it will happen. Today we heard a lot of presenters talk about how they gather data and collate data in large systems of early childhood settings. And one of the things that came out today, I think from Dr. Goen as well as from Ina from Sweden, was that it's very difficult to get high quality data on children's development at a school level and aggregate that. What we are developing and what we have developed is a system that starts to tackle that problem. So I will show you some snapshots of that, and then we'll go from there. So why? I think that the first important thing is why are we doing this? Why is this data being collected? And for different groups of people, whether it's a government, whether it's a private organization like us, whether it's a city-based school chain, the why is going to be different. So each organization will need to define the why for itself, and then go about building a system accordingly. So the why for us is improving early childhood outcomes. I mean, that's what we are all about. That's what we want to do. So we want to create a system that will, over time, constantly improve the delivery of early childhood practice to children and parents, and thereby do more of the things that are better for children and not do the things that don't make a difference, fundamentally. And that's what the data is supposed to do and the analysis is supposed to do. So for example, I'll show you 2 pictures. The one on this side is a classroom in one of our schools in Pune in India. And the one on the right is another classroom in one of our schools in Bangalore. Now, the first one, so the classrooms of children of more or less the same age. They've both been given projects in a very Reggio kind of project-based learning way. And the teachers have worked hard, and the children have worked hard and come up with the displays and the output and everything they're supposed to do. You can see the difference between the two. The first one on this side is a much richer environment. Clearly, the teachers have worked a lot harder, I think, than that one. They'll probably shoot me if I say that. But they've done things better. And now the question is there a difference in the learning outcome of the children between these two, right? And how do you measure that? And what are the factors that have created that difference? Now, visually, we'll say that, yeah, of course there's a difference, right? But what if the data that comes out says there is no difference? And then what factors do you look for? And then what factors are actually important? So those are the kind of questions that we are trying to answer through the creation of this whole system. So the first thing is, so what are we measuring, fundamentally? And for us, again, it comes from the fundamental insight that effective early childhood education is dependent on a lot of things. It's not dependent on one single thing. So for example, and this is not even a full list of things that it's dependent on, and you all know this, so I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. So the first is obviously the human resources. Who you're recruiting, how you're recruiting, what are the motivations of the teachers, what is the training provided to the teachers, what are the qualifications provided to the teachers. All of those factors make a huge impact. This is even before you get them into the classroom. The second is what I would call pedagogy-related factors. So what is the core pedagogy? Are you doing Reggio? Are you doing Montessori? Are you doing your own thing? You know, are you following some other pedagogy? Have you created something that is very goal-oriented, like we do in the East? Have you created something that is very open-ended, like in Sweden or in Finland? The learning environment, like I think we all know that the learning environment makes a huge impact on early childhood outcomes. The resources that are available to the school and to the children. What kind of toys can they play with? What kind of learning aids do they have? All of these things make a huge impact. And then quality of the operations. How is the center being managed? Is health and safety being taken care of? Is security being taken care of? Are the teachers being rotated properly? Do the children have access to all the resources? The family dynamics of the child. Right? Obviously, like everyone here knows that that's important, so I won't even go into that. Nutrition in a lot of places. And then there are a lot of other factors that might come into play, which I haven't listed out here. So the question is, how do you create a system that can, over time, start isolating different factors and try and figure out exactly what is having what sort of an impact on the child? Right? So, I mean, it's hugely ambitious, but that's the goal. And these are the sort of first steps that we're doing. We're taking to do that. So I'll give you an example on pedagogy. So this is a photograph from Anji Play in China. I think for those of you who know, I love Anji Play philosophy. It's really great. It allows children to take risks. They can fall, they can cut themselves, and it builds resilience, right? Now my problem as a business owner is that I can't do it. Why? I have to do stuff like this, where it's really safe and everything, because the parents don't want the kids to get hurt. And in a lot of places, this is in London, the regulators don't allow me to create environments where the kids might get hurt. But I know that that's actually a good thing for the child if they get hurt. So how do I solve this problem, right? So the only way we can solve this problem is by concrete research over periods of time where we are saying, okay, we're running Anji Play in one school, we are running our own thing in another school, and Anji Play has better outcomes when it comes to physical development, resilience, that kind of stuff. But how do you isolate that from everything else? That's really the crux of the problem. So how do we do this? So this is how we are tackling the problem. First, we are creating a very detailed, or we have created a very detailed, standardized system. Now this goes to everything. I'll show you some snapshots of some examples. So for example, all our schools are run on detailed standard lesson plans, which can be delivered by anyone who's gone through the training, with complete resource kits and usage guides. So this is, you won't be able to read it, it's too small, but this is a sample of a lesson plan. Now each of our lesson plans, like for 5 hours, run into 5 pages. There's very detailed guidelines for teachers on how do you set up the classroom, what resources do you use, what are the available resources for the children to play, what observation do you need to do, what development areas are you tackling in each time slot of the lesson plan, every 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Then what we've done is we've tried to take the subjectivity out of assessments and observations, which means we have very, very detailed observation sheets with, as far as possible, obviously there are teachers' assessments, which are photographs and text and stuff, but a lot of the data that we are collecting is across, say, the 12 development areas that we have in our program. And within each development area, there could be like hundreds of possible observations that the teacher might make. So for example, in the gym area or in the physical development area, an observation might be, can jump up 2 steps, and then that's a tick, or it's emerging, or it's developing, or it's fully formed, right? So by hard coding a lot of these things, we can capture about 75 to 80% of the developmental observations that the teacher might make very easily and in a codifiable manner. And the other 20-25% obviously very subjective, where teachers are writing text or really putting in their subjective observations on the child. And then, of course, standard training. So, I mean, we have our own standard training platform, online webinars, workshops, all of that, right? So the idea, again, is that every teacher has gone through the same training, is delivering the same lesson plans to the same age group of children, hopefully with the same proficiency, and then you start looking at, okay, so what's creating, is there a difference in the outcomes, and if so, what is creating that difference, and therefore what do we need to improve upon? So for example, you might have a situation in 2 different schools running the same thing with the teachers who are as well trained, et cetera, and one school is consistently outperforming the other school when it comes to certain parameters. Then for us, that is something that goes and says, okay, this school is doing something really cool and different. Let's adopt this best practice and move it onto the whole platform, because we don't know what those teachers or what that school manager is doing. That could be really nice, because that is all coming from the bottom up, right? And we don't want to stop that, and you can't stop that. So what we want to do is ensure that the best practices are coming from the bottom up and then are going across the whole organization. And so we've also standardized the design and the resources. So this is a school in India, this is a school in Dubai, this is a school in London for the same age classroom, and we use the same furniture and the same resources and the same materials across all our schools, the same learning environment. So again, just take that out of the equation, essentially. Okay, so now you've created a standardized, detailed system, then what? So now we use technology to implement the system. And start collecting the data. Now, over time, a lot of this data is going to be collected using sensors. Right now, our data collection tools are people. So the teachers who input this stuff, the parents who input things, the children themselves when they're interacting with certain things. Over time, a lot of this observation data will move to sensors. So for example, like Neo was showcasing yesterday, you have facial recognition technology now, you have pattern recognition technology now, which can tell you whether a child is crying in a classroom or not, and that's an observation point. Or for example, things like how much has a child slept. I mean, that is something baby monitors can do right now, for example. You could integrate them into classrooms, things like that, right? So this is a snapshot of our system. So this is how a teacher would put in their observation. It's too far away. But you would enter the observation, put up a photograph and stuff like that. System similar to what Sherlyn was just talking about. But this is the interesting bit. So you put in the observation, and then you have a drop-down list of the number of observations that you could be making on this child. So for a teacher, it's really simple, saying, okay, on this parameter, it's emerging, or it's developed, or it's developing. And all that data goes into the system for that child. Later on, a report can be generated, which I won't go into. Then you have, I mean, this is a dummy. Then you have other data like sleep timings, nappy change, what food did they eat, all of that stuff. So all of that is the child's file, and then that's aggregated across the whole sort of cohort. The other bit, which is equally, so this is the parent. So this is a parents app. So for example, the parents can add an incident, child fell down, or, the child counted till 20 at home today and upload a video of that, add an observation, or there's an incident report where the parent is seeing. So now parents also inputting the data. So over time, you can get data from both the school as well as the parent, right, and try and make sense of it. So this is the other aspect, which is really, really important. And we've developed the system because we face this unique challenge of managing quality at the point of delivery across multiple cities and multiple countries. And how do we know whether, the school is actually running with quality? So what we developed is, we developed an app-based quality control, quality review system, where each center manager or person running the school spends 2 hours a day essentially going through a daily checklist of stuff on the app that they have to do. So they have to check the facilities, they have to check the air cons are working, they have to check once a week each classroom whether the teachers are implementing the curriculum. So they have a whole audit list. And then once a month, our auditors will go into the, central auditors will go into the into the classroom, and they have a list of some like 3,000 questions which they have to answer over a 1-year time frame, like every month. And then reports are generated automatically online. So I'll show you what the system looks like again, but just app-based. Reports are generated on the spot and then discussed with the center, and then you put in an action plan to improve, right? At a central level, and this is important, you get to see all the data. So this might be an audit report from either a self-audit or an internal audit of one of the centers, and you say, okay, the average score, you've given a score, average score for the center is 67.25%, they had 13 failed items, that generates an action plan. Now, over 100, 200, 300 centers, you can get very, very high quality data on how your centers are doing across the system, and then you can essentially make red flags on certain parameters so that at an aggregate, things can get red flagged, and then you can go in and investigate on a particular center or a particular situation. So this system we already have. It's not just for us. Anybody can use it from us. It's just a question of what you put into it in terms of whatever any organization's critical audit requirements are. So let's say you're a regulator, and you're trying to regulate, I don't know, like in England, 25,000 nurseries. Ideally what you want is you want all your nurseries and yourself to be on the same quality system, because the nurseries can do the self-audits according to your regulations. You can see the data, and then you can go in whenever the red flags are raised. So that cuts down on your, as a regulator, on your headcount, but it also improves the quality at the point of service, because you know then which nurseries are reporting, for example, that they're complying with regulations. And if you have one nursery that's always compliant with regulations, you know that there's a problem there, and you can go and investigate, right? Because nobody can be fully compliant all the time on everything, right? So then you get a sense of how your system is doing on the whole. And like, this is really simple to do. Okay. And then eventually generate big data for analysis and insight. So I think I had to give 3 takeaways, which I did not have time to put on the slides, but my main takeaways would be identify what you want from the system. What are the goals? I think goals will be different. Then create as standard a system as possible, because that's the easiest to get techified, in essence, and then use technology to implement that. Thank you.